What if Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 7 were actually good? I mean really, really good. Welcome back to this 5-part series where we've already covered some of the major issues with Season 7 and stepped through the first 4 episodes of a reimagined Season 7. Xander is dead, but the First is appearing in its guise. Willow and Giles, on a mission to save a Watcher, discovered a newly resold Spike fighting vampires in England, and Jonathan returned to Sunnydale alone to atone for his past sins. So, without further ado, let's keep going with this new Buffy Season 7. Season 7, Episode 5, Sleeper. Originally, this was the first episode that focused on Spike's brainwashing by the First. In our version, picking up from last time, Giles and Willow express surprise at seeing Spike, who now prefers to be called Will, short for William, which I realize is a little confusing since they call Willow Will sometimes, but let's just go with it. The audience knows he has a soul, but there's no time to reveal that info to Giles and Willow yet. They rush into the house together, find a dead Watcher, but a potential still alive. In Act 1, Buffy returns home to find Dawn in a trashed house, but now it's the return of Joyce and Xander that has them confused. Giles and company in England decide that Willow and Will should return to Sunnydale while he and Vi use a list of potentials on his laptop to gather the rest of them together. Without touching anything, Giles makes Vi get the laptop out of the car, and the two of them head off for a train to the airport while the other two head back to Giles' house in his BMW. Back in Sunnydale, Buffy now catches Jonathan, not Andrew, buying pig's blood and drags him home. In Act 2, Willow asks Will where he's been, and he still neglects to mention his soul, but says he had to get out of Sunnydale after his breakup, and he's been roaming Europe cleaning out vampire nests in places like Paris, Frankfurt, Istanbul, but he's a little evasive and vague on the details when pressed. Back in Sunnydale, Buffy and Dawn are at home interrogating a tied-up and frightened Jonathan, who doesn't reveal much. Back in England, Willow and Will have a conversation about their respective fears about going home, while the Coven prepares a portal that will transport them in their car back to Sunnydale. They get in the car, drive over a special line of sand or something, and very Back to the Future style, the car appears in California where, before they can hit the brakes, they run over and flatten the Welcome to Sunnydale sign one last time. In Act 3, Will gets out of the car and tells Willow that he needs a drink at the Bronze before seeing Buffy again. Willow goes back to the Summers house and updates them about Giles, the potentials, and seeing Xander. When she tells Buffy that Spike/Will is at the Bronze, Buffy goes there, finds him, and he reveals that he's a new man with a soul. In Act 4, Willow is leaving a message for Giles, who's not answering his phone for some reason, when Buffy returns and tells everybody about Will's soul. Jonathan confesses that he was buying pig's blood because he's anemic and the seal wouldn't open. They don't know what he's talking about, but he refuses to share more unless he's untied. And finally, back at the Bronze, we see Will chatting up a woman, but outside, he vamps out and kills her, just as in the original episode. Roll credits. Season 7, Episode 6, Never Leave Me. Here, we'll combine the original episodes 8 and 9 and adjust a few other things. In the prologue, we see a vamped-out Will whistling the tune Early One Morning to himself and burying a woman's body. In Act 1, no longer vamped out, Will returns to the Summers house and is reintroduced to Dawn and Jonathan for the first time. As Buffy finally decides to untie Jonathan and he starts to talk, we see someone shocking, like Drusilla, descend the staircase. As she begins singing the tune, Will is triggered, attacking Jonathan, and we cut to commercial. In Act 2, Buffy knocks Will out and they drag him down to the basement and chain him to the wall. Back upstairs, Jonathan finishes his explanation about the seal and Katrina, and Buffy puts together that he's talking about the room under the principal's office that must be connected to the Hellmouth, and then the group starts to suspect that their interactions with Xander, Katrina, and Joyce must all be connected. Buffy interrogates Will, who says he can't remember what just happened to him upstairs. Meanwhile, at the high school, Principal Wood goes down to the school basement, notices the door to the seal room ajar, and he sees the uncovered seal. As he's about to turn and exit, he's surprised by, and knocked unconscious by, Caleb, who is here much earlier than he originally appeared, to examine the seal himself. A horde of robed figures stream into the room and drag Wood's body off into a side room, and Caleb makes some villainous remark. In Act 3, Will reveals that not only can't he remember what happened upstairs, but he's also been having memory gaps ever since he got his soul back. Buffy decides to leave him chained in the basement until they can figure out what's going on. She tells Dawn and Willow to keep an eye on him and do some research while she goes with Jonathan to inspect the seal. They get there, but they're ambushed by Caleb and the Bringers, and we cut to a commercial. In Act 4, Buffy fights the Bringers, with Caleb mostly hanging back, and as the fight wraps up, he departs, saying that it wasn't time to do this yet anyway, and that he'll see her later. Buffy recognizes the Bringer for what they are, and they realize that they're up against the First. Roll credits. Season 7, Episode 7, Bring on the Night. Now that we've got most of our favorite characters except Giles back in Sunnydale, it's time to start slowly bringing in those lovable potentials. We'll begin the prologue of this episode inside a Greyhound bus, driving at night. The camera moves past a pair of teenage girls talking, some older sleeping people, and then focuses on Rona, a young potential sitting in the back, worried. The bus pulls into Sunnydale, she gets out, and once the crowd disperses, she gets attacked by a pair of bringers. But in this version, instead of being rescued by Buffy, it's the two girls from the first shot. The bringers are dispatched, and the girls introduce themselves as Kennedy and Annabelle. Kennedy asks 1630 Ravello Drive, and when Rona nods, they grab their bags and head out. In the basement of Sunnydale High, Buffy and Jonathan are leaving, but they get surprised by Wood, who stumbles out of the side room where the bringers left him last time. After lame excuses on both sides for why they're there, they part. Roll opening credits. In Act 1, most things will stay the same. Buffy sees Joyce in a dream, Willow tries her first spell in a while, a locator spell to find the bringer's hideout this time, but it's too much for her. Her eyes go black, and for a moment she's overtaken by an evil phantom. As Buffy helps her recover, the doorbell rings, and it's the three potentials from the bus station. In Act 2, old and new characters exchange information, and Jonathan picks up on the fact that Will is being triggered like a Manchurian candidate. Willow puts together that potentials have been killed in the cities that Will said he visited. In the basement, Will starts having flashback memories, and they all realize it's connected. The first had been triggering Will in his vulnerable state, and having him lead a team of bringers to kill potentials around the world. And now he's right here in their midst, which can't be good. Buffy and Dawn head to the Christmas tree farm where she first found the bringers in Season 3. They rediscover the entrance to the bringers' cave, go in, and find a nest of vampires there. While she's out, the First, now that they all know what he is, appears in the house as Xander for the first time and tries to intimidate them all, especially the potentials. In Act 3, Buffy and Dawn fight off the vamps together and find some clue about a vineyard outside of town. No time to investigate, though, as they need to get to school. And there, Buffy and Wood have another awkward conversation stemming from their encounter in the basement. Back home, Annabelle, terrified by the First's speech, packs her bag and sneaks away. When Buffy gets home and learns this, she goes searching, but finds her just in time to watch the bringers kill Annabelle in the street. In Act 4, Buffy follows the bringers to the vineyard, where we notice a lot of weird equipment like explosives and excavation machines. Buffy enters and confronts Caleb, who monologues and then proceeds to mop the floor with her. He breaks her arm, and she retreats. At home, she gets concern and sympathy at first, but she later overhears the potentials and even some Scoobies express doubt about why Buffy ran off alone and her failure to save Annabelle. Roll credits. Season 7, Episode 8, In Every Generation. We're giving this a new title here instead of Showtime to reflect a new revelation from Beljox's eye, and we'll mix in at least one subplot that didn't originally happen until later. In the prologue here, Buffy with her arm in a sling visits Will in the basement when suddenly his chip misfires, causing him agonizing pain. Roll opening credits. In Act 1, Buffy gives her first positive motivational speech to reassure the potentials. Jonathan, meanwhile, has done some research and tells Willow about Beljox's eye. At work, Buffy has a conference with a student, Eve, who actually reveals she's just the First in the guise of one of the girls that Will killed. She warns Buffy that he'll do it again, then disappears. In Act 2, back home, Buffy finds Will still experiencing spasms from the chip, and she phones the flower shop to contact Riley, but gets no straight answer. She decides to unchain Will and take him back to the abandoned Initiative headquarters at UC Sunnydale. Meanwhile, Willow decides she'll use magic to open a portal to Beljox's eye, but she needs someone else to be her kite string or anchor to keep her from going evil. Jonathan volunteers, with Dawn also staying behind to keep the portal open while the other two go through. At the Initiative, Buffy and Will are attacked by demons, and just as they win the battle, Riley and Graham appear with a team of soldiers. In Act 3, Willow and Jonathan talk to Beljox's eye, and it's going to give a lot more detail to finally explain how the Slayer line works, which will also help make the First's plan more clear. Here's what it says. First of all, Beljoxa clarifies that once a Slayer has died, only the next Slayer's death can create a new Slayer. In other words, when Buffy died in Seasons 5 and 6, she didn't create two more Slayers whom we've never seen. This was sort of implied in the series, but this episode will make it explicit. Second, Beljoxa says that there is a well on an unseen plane that holds enough Slayer energy for at least 2 to 3 Slayers per generation, and can slowly regenerate itself over time. Third, when a Slayer dies, her Slayer energy disappears, and energy from the well flows into the next Slayer. This is important because it means that Slayer power doesn't directly transfer from one woman to another, and it also explains how there can be more than one Slayer at a time. The prophecy says that in every generation there is a chosen one, which implies that the well was only meant to be tapped once per generation, but we also know from the series that Slayers typically don't live past 25 or so Beljoxa says the original Watchers made sure this well always had enough energy for at least 2 or 3 Slayers. However, the Watchers didn't foresee rule number 4, which is that if a Slayer comes back to life, new energy pours from the well into her too, because after all, she's still a Slayer. They also never foresaw a Slayer like Buffy dying and coming back to life 3 times. Beljaxazai also mentions offhandedly that a Slayer coming back to life has only ever happened once before Buffy. This will be important later. With Buffy's 3 resurrections, plus Kendra and Faith, that essentially means there have been 5 Slayer activations in 1 generation, and the well is now empty. Beljaxa explains that the well can eventually refill over time, but the First's plan is, if it can kill Buffy and Faith before the well regenerates itself, then the Slayer line will end. Beljaxa mentions that the First is not 100% sure that it's right about this, or how quickly the well regenerates, which explains why it's also killing off all the Watchers and Potentials now, just to be sure. In Act 4, Willow and Jonathan return home and share what they learned. Willow and Kennedy get to know each other better and talk about Willow's exhaustion after the last spell. At the initiative, Riley gives Buffy the choice to remove or repair the chip, and she removes it. We get a quick glimpse of Caleb talking to Xander at the vineyard while we see Bringers digging for something, and they discuss that Will is still under their control and the chip makes no difference. When Buffy and Will return home, she announces that they're going to leave Will unchained as long as he's not alone with Rona or Kennedy. Everyone begrudgingly goes along with this, but we can tell that Dawn especially is not happy about it. Roll credits. And that takes us to about the midpoint of Season 7. Caleb's on the scene, we've got our first potentials, and the First's plan has become much clearer, but there are still questions about what Buffy can do about Will and how to stop the First. For what comes next, join us in the next video.